Welcome back to the Outliers Project, you guys. I'm Molly Hawkins, and thanks again for joining me. This show is about people who choose paths that don't make sense on paper necessarily, who build lives, businesses, and identities outside the obvious lanes. Now, outliers aren't just defined by what they've created, but by what they've maybe resisted, what they've returned to, and the parts of themselves they've had the courage to let out in a world that doesn't always make space for them. Today's conversation was really special to me because I got to sit with somebody that I've known for over 20 years, someone that I've looked up to, and someone that I think has, this recipe for success. She's done a lot in her life. I wonder if it's something that is inside of her, much like a lot of other entrepreneurs, that has driven her to create, to be bold enough to do some of these things that she's accomplished in her life. And I'm really excited to share her story with you guys. All right. Okay, you guys. So today we are here with Rachel Gardner, the owner of Musicology Co, a record store in Edmonds, Washington. And she is in multiple bands. She DJs, volunteers with music festivals. She's a wife, a mom of 2 boys, fosters dogs, and holds down a household and a full-time job in e-commerce as well. Does that cover everything, Rachel?
Yeah. Yeah, when you say it, it sounds like a lot.
It is a lot. I feel like some of us are, I don't have kids and I have one job and a couple side hustles, but I can't imagine being a mom, being in bands. When do you get to just sit at home and wear comfy pants?
Yeah. I actually do that a lot more than you think. I think that I juggle a lot of things, but when I have downtime, I truly am like the biggest couch potato. So people are like, you're always busy. And I'm like, oh no, I'm either like here or I'm just sacked out, reading a book, watching something, cuddling with dogs.
I don't even understand how you have time to read a book. It's wild, and I know social media projects this image, and sometimes you're posting stuff later of you doing, your activities or things that you're promoting, things that you're doing. But I would never guess that you have time for couch, let alone reading.
Yes. I also don't sleep much, so that's probably part of it.
I think that's one of the, I wonder, a lot of people who are super successful or these entrepreneurs, there's this rise and grind culture that I think succeeds because I think there's a certain DNA or wiring of a lot of people that is maybe part of the equation of being, an outlier. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need my sleep. I need my 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I take my moments to sleep in when I can, but I'm definitely a night owl and always like to have multiple things going on. So,
what's your average night of sleep?
Lately, it's probably like 6 hours, but I'm trying to get better at that.
Lord.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Well, so long as you feel healthy.
Oh, I didn't say that.
So we're here at Musicology Co, and it is absolutely beautiful, and I've been here a couple times, but for folks who haven't been here, describe what we're seeing, where we're at, and the space.
Yeah, so we're a small indie record store. I like to talk about it as like record store / music boutique / community space. So we're sitting on the stage. We have this tiny stage, and we have live music every week. We do open mics. We have a really strong group of songwriters that come and share music here. Later today, we have a group that just comes and does like a jam session and sing along for anybody who wants to come and participate. We also do like turntable classes and a lot of community type activities. We sell used and new vinyl, cassettes, CDs, and then a lot of local merch. So local bands. We have a lot of vinyl and CDs for local bands. And yeah, place for people that enjoy music.
I heard you are also going to be producing vinyl for...
Yeah. In the future, we will not necessarily produce, but we'll be cutting some lathe vinyl in the future. It's all, baby steps to get where you want to go.
There goes another hour of sleep.
Yeah.
So 10 to 15 years ago, I doubt anyone would imagine that people would be opening record stores again, let alone DJing with vinyl. I believe you guys DJ with vinyl.
Yep.
you're the epitome of an outlier. Why, and why now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've always been a record collector. A lot of times in my life, it would be like, oh, go to record stores and get a few dollar records, because a lot of my adventures before now weren't very. I would move around a lot and travel a lot, and so not a great opportunity to have a huge record collection. So I've grown it, I've shrunk it many times, and it's very much part of my DNA. So I grew up listening to records. I was born in a music store, so like I think at that point it's predestined. And when my parents had a music store, I was pretty little, but it was very much part of our family. And now it was, timing wise, a lot of it had to do with just where in my life I was. So kids getting older, having a perceived capacity to take on more.
I love that perceived capacity.
And it made sense. The perfect space came about. A friend of mine who owns a boutique in Edmonds, who's my boutique mentor. Her name's Jen. She owns The Crow. Definitely recommend going there. She texted me and she's like, oh, I found the perfect space. Because I had always said, oh, someday. And I went and looked at it and called, and like the next day signed the lease. And then I was like, oh, okay, got to get this up in a month.
So what path does it take one to lead them into being bold enough to do something? I mean, do you think you're wired a certain way? Are you,
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of like weirdo energy where you don't always realize that maybe you think differently. So to me, it seems completely logical. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, this comes together. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go, find 5,000 records or more to stock my store. And it all seems very logical. I joke sometimes that it's like a mixture of like pure delusion and motivation. I don't know. I mean, I do think that you have to have, I've worked with a lot of founders through my career, and I think one of the common elements is a little bit of that delusion, and not in like a negative way, and just like a willingness to set aside disbelief and some audacity. I'm just being like, meh, why not? We're gonna try it. Having a little bit of risk tolerance. Like, okay, what is my tolerance for this risk that I'm going to take? And, is it, I'm going to crash and burn? Is everybody going to see that? Is it going to be humiliating? And I've done that several times in my life. So I think after you get through a few of those, you're like, yeah, okay, well, I can survive that. So I might as well go for it and try the things that I really want to do.
You were talking about weirdo energy, which is actually something, I totally resonate with that. And, as a kid, I hid that weirdo energy. And there's a point where you become aware of, your surroundings and your peers and what's quote unquote normal. And it breaks my heart that so many kids, so many of us, it wasn't until probably my mid to late 20s I figured out that weirdo energy is actually cool. Same with like being a nerd. Like, it's actually cool to be a nerd. And look at Bill Gates. Like, he's a rock star, and you know what I'm saying. And like,
oh yeah,
I've read it in a number of books. I've heard people talk about it, but it's like there's a point where you stop being a kid, and I hate that. And I think if, as a parent, I think you've done a wonderful job, encouraging your kids to play and to try things. And I would only imagine that you really, allow them to be those weirdos that they needed to be or need to be. And I think I wish more parents understood that.
Yeah. I think kind of the time that you and I grew up, it was so different. Like, weirdo wasn't accepted. And it's still, I think, a challenge for youth, but I do see a lot more acceptance of people being their eccentric selves and creating space for it. And I think that's a lot about what the record store is for me, is like a place to create space for those who are looking for where they belong. And so, you mentioned belonging, and that was so much of my childhood was searching for belonging. And when you have musician parents and you move around a lot, and you're already kind of naturally a weirdo, it was very challenging. I got bullied a lot, not great experiences, but it really opened up that sense of like, how do I create environments where people feel included? And I've found that a few times in my life. Music is an interesting one because I do think it's a language that can cross a lot of barriers. And so you can create that sense of belonging because people find that sameness in music. And not all areas of music. There's parts of the music industry that are very harsh and cliquey, and there's a lot of gatekeeping. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think finding ways to open that up. And so a big part of like the mission or values of this this brand and this concept is to create an inviting space that anyone can be part of. And so whether it's the open mic or jam session or, coming in, like, we don't care if you know how to pronounce a artist name. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, if you want to learn a new artist, we have our listening stations. We have one for vinyl. We have one for CDs. Like, just come and talk to us and learn about music. And I love, I always encourage individuals who come, they're like, oh, you have live music. I'm like, yeah, do you want to come play? And, a lot of times I'll have people that are like, oh, I've never played in front of people. I'm like, okay, like, bring your guitar down. Like, let's do this. And it can just help get over that first hurdle, right, of going and playing a stage, because that can be really intimidating. But if you can find that sense of confidence and belonging and identity in a smaller space, in like a third space, and then take that and graduate elsewhere. And, big thing I do as well with musicians who come through here is try to link them up with other venues, right? Like, this obviously isn't the ultimate big gig everybody's looking for. I'd love it if that was the case. But I've always believed that sharing resources is really important, right? Like, they're not precious to me. They're precious to everyone. So let's, here's how you get this contact information. Here's how you get on the stage, or here's another band that might be great to open up for, and just trying to create those connections and remove those barriers for people so that everyone does feel like, you're welcome, you belong.
That was going to be one of my questions. I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping in a lot of industries, and the music industry, it's, it seems precious.
Yeah.
And, what is it like being a woman in the music industry, as a business owner in this community, and and in a space that's, probably fairly scarce. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And what's the opportunity?
Yeah, it's interesting. Being a women-owned record store, being a bass player as a woman, vinyl DJing, like a lot of these activities are very male-centric. I never know how to answer the question of like, what's that like? Because I'm like, I don't know anything different. I can't compare it to anything. There are definitely times where, you'll get the reactions. You'll get customers coming in, and if I'm here and one of my male employees is here, they'll go to the guy and ask the question, and I just kind of ignore it. I'm like, whatever you feel comfortable with interacting, asking questions, that's for you. As far as the music industry, not only being a female bass player, but being like a middle-aged woman, I think that's where I'm at now. It's not young and sexy, and like, you don't get all the invites. But on the other side of that, there's a lot of respect for the individuals who have kind of endured and are still showing up and making music happen. And I've definitely had I've had my rejections and my heartbreaks, and it's an up and down thing to be in music. But growing up with musician parents, it's something I saw a lot. And my dad, who's made multiple albums and toured several times, he would always say like, oh, for every yes that I got 99 no's. Mm-hmm. So if you're not willing to go through the 99 no's, maybe it's not the right thing. Like you have to have that kind of passion and willingness to follow through and like to stick with this. Not always the best advice, because there are times where you should not take 99 no's, like maybe take the first one.
Do you think if you had a penis, you would have different outcomes?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of my younger years, and I think for the most part, I've really evolved out of this, but I was always playing with this balance of trying to dumb things down. So being really good at math or certain subjects would put a target on me. And so I learned how to like keep that really quiet. And it was really challenging in my career to be, like very focused on trying to create success, but always doing so in a way that wouldn't take up room, wouldn't intimidate anybody, wouldn't put a target on me or make people question, why is she here? So a lot of the like, I don't know. And it's been a process, right? Like there's even, I found myself at times, trying to lower my voice in boardrooms where I'm the only female there. And it's like, okay, why am I doing that? Right? Like, this is my natural voice. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, listen to me.
I've heard other women speak about this. Like they make themselves small. I've done the same thing. I still struggle with it. Like putting myself out there. It's like, I've always put other people out there because it's something that I had a toolkit for. I have the recipe, but I for some reason never felt comfortable about putting myself out there. And so I would just stand in the back, or I would keep my voice small. Some would disagree with that. Yeah. I definitely.
Compared to what it could be, though, right? Yeah. Like, and it was interesting. I read something a long time ago about like how men would come into a business meeting. And I tried it one time and it was so weird. Like I went in, I was the only woman that, big executive board, and everybody sits down and they just take up all that space, right? And so I just started doing that in meetings where I just like put my arms out and like push the chairs and like try to like just make myself really big. And it felt so awkward, but people responded to me, like that, here's a space. And I think it's interesting, right? Like, how do you use body language? But it's also something where, went through that phase. And now I think I'm in the phase where I'm just like, I just don't, give an F. Like, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to take up the space that I do.
There's that old adage, something about, if I knew what I what I know now. I'm terrible at quotes, but
no,
it's funny with age.
Would have been probably a lot smoother path to get where I am.
What though, that path shaped, who you are now, and, led you to having two beautiful children and these incredible experiences, and, now being a beacon and, a mentor and a guiding light for so many people. You talked about third spaces, and now going back to, the time in our lives when we met. For me, I talk about this often, but, it sounds so silly to say it, but if it wasn't for snowboarding, I don't know where I would be in my life, because in the snow community, in general, I did have that weirdo energy, and I didn't feel like I belonged. That's a whole other story. But, snowboarding in the snow sports community and that whole experience made me, for the first time, feel like I belonged somewhere. And it shaped my career, lifelong friendships that have kind of extended beyond snowboarding. And I think about, what you're doing here. It's very similar. But, I'd love for folks who don't know about your backstory, talk a little bit about, that life,
that phase of my life.
Yeah. Because, when I met you, you were repping, you were living that ski bum life, but you're just, ferocious and just, doing your thing. And I always thought you were so cool.
Yeah. Well, I always thought you were so cool too. So we're in that industry, ski and snowboard life. And I, grew up with a musical family. There's not a lot of money in music unless you're the few that make it. So we didn't have a lot of money. It was a lot of scrapping things together. I got really good at like the barter system. And I went skiing with a friend of mine in high school, which is how I got exposed to it. And in that moment, I was like, like this is everything, right? Like just being out there, the movement. There's just something about skiing and snowboarding. And so when I, in those years, tried to ski as much as I could, got a part-time job, went with just the crappiest gear you could find. And as you do, duct taping things together. When I hit college, couldn't really afford to do much. So I was like, okay, well, how do I do this? And I found ways to ski for free, which was working at the mountain. And then working at ski shops where I met some of the reps in the industry. And I graduated young, so I was 17 when I was in college, and probably a little too bold for my own good at times. But I remember talking to the Rosno rep and being like, the skis you make for girls just suck. Like, they're so terrible. You just, you make them smaller, you make them pink. Like, there's nothing good about this. And he was just laughing. And then somehow we got talking, and I was like, is there anything, can I work for skis? And this was kind of my whole mentality for my 20s, right? Like, how do you work for snow time? So I started the circuit and repping, and spent many years working with Rossignol, and skiing every day, and living in B lot of Crystal Mountain in a fifth wheel trailer. Not, people think of it as like glamorous, and you're like, no, it was cans of chili every day, and lots of skiing. But I was shoveling roofs to get pizza, and ketchup packet soup. I did a lot of babysitting in exchange for groceries. That was one I remember, where like babysit on my day off. And then the families would bring like a bag of like bread and spaghetti for me. I still barter. The people bring stuff in the record store. I'm like, okay, let's trade. Like, what's going on here? So the ski life really became just who I was. And found my community. As I said before, like I didn't really fit in until I found that life. And I think there was something about stripping everything else away. You find people that have that same interest. It became less about like how you look or what you have or those things. It's like, can you go ride that? Will you go ride that with me? And is this what you want to do every day? And you've got goggles on and gear and everything, and like you're just, it's really about making those connections without all those other layers. And then of course got very obsessed and started doing the year-round winters. So went down to New Zealand, worked at Whakapapa on the North Island, worked at Cadrona on the South Island. Really just absolutely loved that life. Stayed in action sports for almost my entire career. Eventually, my joints did not agree with all of the crashes and all that I have put myself through. So music was a part of my life through that, although, a lot of what we experienced in that time frame was a lot more about hip hop and that culture. And getting more and more into music has been that swap for me of playing bass on a stage when everything's grooving feels very much like snowboarding down a like huge open bowl. So
it's probably got to have similar exhilaration when you step onto the stage. You're a little nervous. You're like, I know I can do this, but you get those butterflies. It's really interesting. In my journey, and the whole purpose of this podcast is to really kind of seek an understanding and share things that people have learned, things that I've learned, and the people that I've gotten to connect with. One thing that I've seen, and actually you articulated it really well, this idea that when you find people who you have common, like these deep interests and, common interests with, you can go so much deeper with those people. And, what we had in snowboarding and, I still have those lifelong connections with people. I see that with music. I have a lot of friends who maybe struggled, were a little lost or didn't have hobbies, purpose, or passion. And when they found music, it completely transformed their life, whether they're just, playing music as a hobby or they turned it into a career. It's a really beautiful thing, and I hope everybody can find something like that in their life.
Me too. And I think with music, one of the things that I just absolutely love as far as if you're going to make it a hobby is that there's no age limit. Like if you're hitting your 60s and you're like, I want to learn a new instrument, like, cool, go for it. Right? Like there's always opportunities, and you don't get that with a lot of hobbies, right? But you can start at any age. You can pick it up. It doesn't matter. You can learn something.
So I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about owning a record shop now. Can you share with folks how it's going? Like, has it met your expectations? Break it down. Like, can I, would you recommend starting a record shop in 2026 to anybody out there? I mean, I feel like vinyl's having a resurgence.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Vinyl's having a resurgence, but anytime you have a resurgence, the question is what is the fad cycle? And I think that's what makes me the most nervous is you see, and you can include me in that of somebody opening a record store, but you see so many opening right now. And so as with any fad, like in action sports or anything else, like what is that going to look like? At what point does it peak and then retract? And I don't know the answer to that, hopefully a long ways away for my sake and every other shop. I think as far as expectations, it's a hard one. I don't know if I had a lot of expectations going into it. The big goals for me were to create a community space and to sell enough records to pay for it. So, and retail's hard. Getting the right product, managing the sales to payroll to keeping the lights on. I think the amount of time that is spent just on the back end stuff maybe was more than I expected, and trying to juggle that with full-time work and music and kids and everything else. So that part quite challenging, very worth it. There's times where I've spent my entire weekend working on inventory and payroll and budgeting, and I'm like, man, why do I do this? And then I come in to the shop, and like just this week, we had an artist who something fell through with a venue. They asked like last minute, hey, can I just hop on over and perform at your shop, and I'll bring the people? And I'm like, sure. And we weren't open, so I just like run down there, and I'm in there, and he's performing. He's lovely, and people are singing along and they're dancing, and I was like, oh yeah, this is why I do this, just to see that joy in people. So as far as recommending, I mean, sure, if you've got it in you and you want to go for it, there's some really challenging pieces, as with any business. I think with record stores, one of the challenges that people probably don't think about as much when they first open is how much you're going to hustle to find inventory. So if you're buying new inventory, that's fine. You just go through a distributor and pick and choose, and that's great. I have a passion for used inventory, which means you get into some like super sketchy back alley deals that you're like throwing cash around on something that, I mean, there's a couple where I've done pickups and I walk in and I'm like, I'm not even going to look at it because I just need to get out of here. So I can't cash over, grab the bins, and I'm like, we'll see when we get to the shop. So there's a lot more of that than you might anticipate. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe other stores don't deal with that.
That's amazing. That kind of reminds me of some stories of Rice Phillips and former employees.
Like sketchy.
Early days.
Yeah.
One thing that you would do differently that maybe would set someone else up for success if they're thinking about it?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Just one.
One. Probably be prepared with more capital at the beginning. I'm really proud of what has been created off of a small amount of capital, but it's also created a lot of stress because there are times where it's like gets really squeaky.
For what you don't have in fiscal capital, it comes out of emotional capital.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yes, I traded a lot of emotional capital in that first year.
So, after all the highs and lows of running a business, for me, it's funny. I hear you talking about your experience, and it reminds me of my coffee shop that only lasts like 2.5 years, but it's now thriving. The new owners are crushing it, but it's community that made it worth it for me, and it's the connections that you make, and it's just like, seeing people singing along with the artists on stage. It's like, those are the moments that make it worth it, but it has to pencil right.
Yeah. And I think that's challenging because, and I loved your coffee shop. Like I got to perform there. I absolutely loved your coffee shop. I think building community spaces that pencil are very challenging, and something I didn't anticipate, because in my mind, so much of what I do is from that context of like, let's be friends, right? Like, I feel like sometimes I'm like golden retriever, right? I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to be friends with everybody. It does not always get reciprocated. Very often not. But when I open the shop and, reach out to other stores and I'm like, let's collaborate, let's, do all these things. I didn't anticipate how much competition there would be. And I don't mind competing with myself, but I don't have a lot of interest in competing with others. And the other like shops or, individuals or industry pressure of trying to become better by putting others down, like that just doesn't fly with me. It's not how I operate. And it can be really challenging when you see that mentality or behavior get rewarded with success and money and sales. And that's something I still grapple with of like, if you're going to be somebody who puts community first as a business, how do you do that and still push for, I don't push for dominance. I want to push for collaboration, but I want to do it in a way that everybody wins. And that just in your more typical capitalism, scenarios, that doesn't always work out. And so I have, people who come in and be like, well, you need to run this as much more like sales. And I'm like, okay, like yes, I want to sell enough to cover these things. And like, yeah, it'd be lovely if I ever took a dime out of this place, which I don't currently. But that's not like how I'm wired and driven. And that's a really interesting thing as a business owner.
It's wild because you work in sales and marketing.
I do. I'm really good at selling for other people. For myself, I am not as good at it.
It's sad to hear, that it's so hard to really create a thriving community space, because I think right now everyone is really seeking connection and belonging, post-COVID, in this digital world that we live in. I think we need it more than ever. You already kind of talked about it, but, music really does bring people together in so many ways. And you talked a little bit about how this space can play a role, in the industry, leading, setting the tone. You're a woman in the industry, in many industries now. And so that's very inspiring. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, I believe is what they say. Do you feel an increasing pressure? I mean, I remember when I owned my businesses, there were days where I just wanted to disappear. That meme of Homer Simpson where he's, receding back into the hedges, right? How are you doing?
It can be very lonely. So it's funny talking about community and building spaces for people. And then you find yourself feeling very, very alone. And that's something that I'm really working on. Like, how do I manage that, because it also happens in my career. And it's interesting, you know one of my direct reports who has been promoted several times over the last many years and has really grown her career. And we were having a conversation within the last couple of weeks where she was like, Rachel, you told me that as you rise in your career, it becomes very lonely. And she's like, you told me that many years ago. And all of a sudden it just clicked and that hit me. And I'm feeling it right now. And I was like, yeah, it does happen, right? Where as you take on more responsibility, and your responsibility includes people's livelihood, building teams where, this is their paycheck. This is what they rely on. As somebody who takes a huge amount of accountability and responsibility, it can feel very isolating. So yes, many times have felt the wanting to pull back into the hedges, or, when you get the fantasy of like, I could just get in my car and drive to Mexico, like be on a beach. Those definitely come up. And I think it's something that I will always balance because it's a tendency that I can fall into, is that like loneliness and isolation. And that's where it's so important to find those connections that you can talk about those things with, and to maintain really solid lifelong friendships like the one with you, where you can reach out to someone and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. When you're trying to create really big things and make them happen, it's interesting because if people haven't been there or are still processing through their own barriers, it's hard to connect on those topics. And so being able to connect with people who've gone out there and crashed and burned a few times, I think you can have those conversations.
I couldn't have said it better myself. No. So I know you have some people coming soon. I don't.
Oh yeah.
A door just opened and then closed. So I'm not sure if there's.
Yeah, it could be the neighbors too.
Okay. I just have a couple more questions for you. So I wonder what lies ahead for music. Once upon a time, we just had live shows or say radio stations that played music, and there were really just a couple of them per city, right? And especially per genre. And there was only so much airtime, aka only so many stars that were made, or so many musicians that really made it. Now we're living in this world of streaming, and it's it's evolved from radio to cassettes, 8-track, CDs, MP3s, Napster. Now we have streaming, which is, it's democratized music. What's next? I mean, with vinyl shops popping up, are we going backwards in time? Are people seeking something? I think about that experience, why I love vinyl. Everything is so fleeting in life now that to be able to have an experience, you pull the vinyl record out of the sleeve, you take both hands, you place it on your turntable. It just feels meaningful. I mean, what's next in music?
Yeah, so I think about this a lot, and I don't know, but my theory is that as everything becomes noise, and all this talk about AI generated music of like, oh, you can just put in a prompt and there's your song, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. I think that there will be a resistance to that, and people will be seeking out more of the experience. So the physical experience of vinyl, cassette, CDs, where you listen to the whole album. I think a lot more intention about going to see live music. I actually think that people enjoy imperfection in music. And so when you hear something that's highly manufactured and auto-tuned and fake, it just doesn't really evoke the same emotional reaction. So I think over the next, let's say decade, I think we'll get more and more interest in physical collection of music and of going to live shows and having it be that experience, or even playing music, because it can't be replaced. I mean, that's fine. You can put in a prompt, make a song that will have a space somewhere. I know for me that isn't my direction. I even we've been having a lot of interest in cassettes, which I found fascinating. And this is where I felt, felt my age, because you hear people that went through the whole first round of vinyl and they're like, oh, it's such a pain in the ass, right? Like lugging all the vinyl around. And as a vinyl DJ, I can say it's a total pain in the ass, like taking 3 crates of vinyl with you to go play a 2-hour show. But cassettes, and I was like, oh my God, why would you want a cassette? Like I remember the pencil and just pain in the ass. And then we got some really good cassettes in, and I found this, little cassette Walkman and got a couple of cassettes, and I've been loving it. Like I just, put the little cassette on. It actually forces me to turn my phone off because I've got my little Walkman on and walk around doing my chores, like dancing with my cassette playing, and it's just such an experience. So I'm all for it.
I have to share this photo with you. I was scanning photos my folks gave me, and I just found this adorable photo. I just sent it to my brother yesterday.
Okay, that's amazing.
See,
we need more of that.
Right? I wonder what I was listening to. I couldn't agree with you more. I do think I think live shows, something physical, there's going to have to be just across the board from film to social media accounts to music. I'd imagine that there's going to be some kind of stamp or certification or seal that might live in this ephemeral digital world, but to have a physical copy of an album from an actual artist, like there will be value in that. I think the currency of physical goods is going to increase too. So if you're looking at the collectible side of cassettes or CDs, or even I'm regretting I finally got rid of my CDs finally after moving 50 times.
Yep.
But I'm like, damn, I should have kept those. But so we've just spent, I think, nearly an hour chatting. I appreciate you making time because I know you're a busy woman. That's an understatement. One question, we talked about belonging a little bit, and I guess my last question that I have for you is, have you found what you're looking for?
I mean, no and yes. Like, do we ever? I think what keeps me going is not becoming complacent. So I think there will always be an element of me that is searching. I think having a lifelong search for belonging is an interesting one to experience, because you do get to a point where you're like, if I haven't found it yet, am I ever going to? And what does that look like? And maybe I need to change my thoughts about what that looks like. And so I think in some ways, yes, I feel very connected to this space and to the individuals who come in here. I really hope that others feel like they belong here. I don't know if I will ever get to a point where I'm like, found it. Cool, I can go relax and sip a pina colada on the beach and never have to worry about anything again.
Well, hopefully every time you check a box, it gives you space and room to, pursue something else. And, hopefully, I know I'm searching for that, in a way, but maybe that's for folks like you and I, maybe that is part of the journey. And, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you. I can't wait to check back in another year and hear how things are going.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.